How many Kohanim, Gdolim, high priest, served during the era of the second Beit HaMikdash? We all aware we have two temples, two Beit HaMikdash. The difference in years is only 10 years, 410, 420. Yet, during the second temple, many priests served, many high priests. There is one version that said it was 300. So if you go by that direction, it means that some of the high priests served less than full year. There are other versions, like 80, 81, etc. But here in our Talmudic session, you see that the mainstream, the main view is about 300. Why is that? That's one phase of our study. Today it's a fascinating daf with a brilliant Agadita speaking about the causes of the destruction of the first temple and the second temple, but also have a lot of messages taken home from the text, indirectly from the text. So we are in the daf tet, page 9, 8 lines from the top of the page. Amar Rabba בר בר חנה אמר רבי יוחנן, מהי דכתיב יראת השם תוסיף ימים ושנות רשעים תקצורנה. King Solomon tells us in the book of Proverbs, chapter 10, that fear or awe of the Lord prolongs days, and the years of the wicked will be shortened. Do we mean literally that there is a set-up time, a length of years for a person, and then it can be extended or reduced? So he derived from that an important lesson. He said, Yirat Hashem tosif yamim, fear of the Lord adds more days for a person's life. Ze Mikdash Rishon, that's an application to the first Beit HaMikdash, שעמד 410 שנים, that was stand for 410 years, ולא שימשו בו אלא 18 כהנים גדולים. During the years, the 410 years, they have only 18 high priests that serve in Beit HaMikdash. Amen. The Maharsha tells us that yes, it's a decree, as we said in the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, how long the year is going to be. But he said the book of Kings, the second book of Kings, chapter 20, tells us that God added to the life of King Chizkiah 15 years. The same way, it's a belief that it's reduced. So the Maharsha said, yes, it is a decree upon the birth of a person, how long he or she is going to survive or live in this world. But Yirat Hashem add more years, and vice versa. Ushnot Reshaim Tiktzona, that's less. So he said here, Ze Mikdash Sheni, that's applied to the second Beit HaMikdash, שעמד בו, עמד 420 שנה, ושימשו בו יותר מ300 כהנים. So the text here tells us that the application of that pasuk said, during the era of the second Beit HaMikdash was 420 years, yet about, some said more than 300 high priests served. Now, first and foremost, we try to explain it first in a literal meaning. So in the literal pshat, the way it's written, the version, what does that mean, 300 years? There is one version that Yerushalmi brought. He said that during the era of the Second Temple, it was 80, maybe 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. But Tosfot at the very end said, Hatam lo kachashiv el hakohanim sheyatzu mipinchas, which means it is more than 300. We just count there in Yerushalmi the Kohanim that have a lineage, have the descendants from Pinchas. But in general, the idea is, unfortunately, that more than 300 high priests served during the second Beit HaMikdash. Now, there are several avenues to understand. One way is to say that they don't deserve it, meaning people paid, soon you see, for the job. Really wicked people that paid money to get the job. There is another version that said that they are befitting high priests, but it was others that were more befitting, yet they paid to be selected, almost like political campaign, right? That sometimes there are people who paid even they not deserve because they want to get to the office.
Did the Kohanim select their own Kohen Gadol, as that was selected amongst the Kohanim?
That's a good point, because here we're dealing with the era that the Jewish people, as far as the Josephus and other tells us, it was the era that we have our autonomy, yet the high priesthood was appointed job. An example is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that speaks about Rabbi Hanina Sgan HaKohanim, that he was a second deputy. He was the man with the great knowledge, yet the appointee can be anyone that the leadership of either Romans...
The occupying power.
Yes, occupying power. So in that sense, unfortunately, more than 300. Now, the Bach tells us, he said, and soon you see an example, Rabbi Yochanan ben Tota, he said, צא מהם 40 שנה ששמעון הצדיק. It was 40 years that Shimon the righteous served as a high priest. ו80 ששימש יוחנן כהן גדול. And 80 years that Yochanan served. ו10 ששימש ישמעאל בן פבי, 10 meaning 10 years that he served, ואמרי לה 11 ששימש רבי אלעזר בן חרסון. So here we speak about 4 righteous high priests that serve altogether 279 years. Now, מכאן ואילך, from this point, צא וחשוב, figure out, כל אחד ואחד לא הוציא שנתו. Meaning, all the rest did not complete the years in office, which means as number of remaining high priests is greater than the number of years remaining. That's very frightening statement. So if we go by the Bach, welcome back, good morning. If we go by the Bach, so he said here, El Yoshua ben Gamlad bekahane Rav Rebbe, which means according to the Bach, people just pay money. Just pay money, meaning wicked people that pay the money in order to be selected as a high priest. Tosfot Yeshanim, in the previous Chet Amud Bet, 8b, said that he quoted Kuntres, quoted Rashi, that said that they gave money to Malchut Beit Hashmonai. We're getting close to Hanukkah. So that's one version, but he held that it was the Malchut Beit Hordes, that it was a Herod kingdom, which means that they paid the Romans, or people who were in charge, and they really not befitting. So here we just dig into another level. Josephus claimed that only 3 high priests were forced for their positions, which means it is unlikely that all these high priests were removed from the position while alive. So what's happening here? So according to what we understand, one way, one avenue is to say that people are so narcissist or so much with the ego that they are willing and ready to die just to get the title of the high priest. Meaning, they are willing, and they knew that when they enter the domain of the Holy of Holies in Yom Kippur, they may not going to make it, and they knew that they're not going to complete the year, but they still wants to have the title. Another way is the people said, I deserve it, I'm entitled to that. And that's again relate to an ego issue, that they feel that they entitled and therefore they get it. The story I heard once from one of the teachers, Rabbi Vilensky. He was the son-in-law of the Rabbi Dom, a student of the ancient Lomza yeshiva. It's a well-known yeshiva in Europe. And he talked about Rabbi Archek Bakht. It was a great sage. And the students used to go on Friday night to the rabbi's house and discuss Torah and the Parsha right after the meal. So one time they entered to the rabbi's house and they saw him going around back and forth and saying, why Pharaoh behave like that? He gets the warning from God. He gets these all these plagues, the blood, the frogs, all these lice, all these plagues. So he knew that God is overruling him. So why he didn't give up and just let the people go? Why is that? And he went back and forth, and then he said, the answer is very simple. He didn't think. He just so adamant to achieve something that he didn't think deeply of the consequences, which go to a very deep level of understanding, that when a person wants something and he has such a desire to get something, he's not always have his heart and mind in the right place. He just focusing on something and that's it. And it's dependent upon the person's wish. So if someone wants to get in an office to be high priest, so they don't care about consequences or anything else. Anyway, so they said here that they are wicked, they couldn't make it. So now let's think together. If we are speaking about more than 300, so you have here 300 plus high priests and 4 that righteous. So all the rest, look how many die less than a year in their service. There is a different variation over what exactly happened in the high priesthood, and just say it in a side note. There are those who hold that it was 2 positions in the high priests. One is more administrator and one was in the service. There are those who said it was all one single one. Anyway, it's another note I'd like to share with you. It's the rabbi of Rehovot. His name is Rabbi Cook, Rabbi Simcha Cook, a great teacher and a great man. So his brother Shlomo was the first chief rabbi of Rehovot. It's a nice city in Israel. Unfortunately, he died in a most tragic way with his family. Only son and daughter survived. So the story goes that the rabbis came to comfort the family. So they said, we have a concept we studied in Brachot, if you remember, the idea of tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik v'ralo, righteous person suffering, good person have a good life, etc. It's a long discussion. But he said, you know what the confusion started? When you have tzaddik v'tovlo, if you have a righteous man that have everything, looks like every wish he have, he gets. So that's make a confusion, because you need to ask yourself, is this person a real righteous? If he's a real righteous, what's happening? Why he have such a life? So that's one of those things that relate to faith that we not always understand. But here they said that they couldn't make it. And we talk about large amount of high priests. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta, Rabbi Yochanan ben Tota, again, this is a fascinating story. Today we have plenty of stories. Rabbi Yochanan ben Tota, they say that he converted to Judaism. Tota is, according to our sources, it's not a Jewish name. So the rabbis tells us in several sources that it was a fellow Jew that owned a cow those days that was part of the business. And he turned sour financially, and he sold the cow to a non-Jew. And all of a sudden, guess what happened? The cow walks for the 6 days of the week.
Mm-hmm.
It's come to Shabbat, the cow refused.
Right.
So the non-Jew came and he said to him, that rabbi, what should I do? We make a deal. We saw you sell me this cow and it's not walking on Shabbos, right? So he went there and he went to the cow's ear for the best, and he said out loud, I'm sorry to hear, because the non-Jew said that I'm beating her, I'm doing all kind of things. She refused. So he said to her, look, cow, you know that I used to own you, and during the week you walk for me, and Shabbat you relax. Now, because of my iniquities, I forced to sell it to this fellow, non-Jewish. Go and do your job. And all of a sudden the cow turned and started walking on the following Shabbat for the non-Jew. So the non-Jew gets a great fear. And he said, here is a cow that doesn't know how to communicate and walk for this fellow and recognize the Creator. And I, a person that Almighty gave me a wisdom and intelligence and understanding, and I don't recognize that there is God. So he went and sincerely converted to Judaism, and he married to be one of the leaders, or one of the rabbis. So that's name Rabbi Yochanan ben Tota. Tota is like Torah. It's with Aleph. It means that it's a cow. It's the name of a cow. And in Aramaic, Tota is cow. And this Tota caused him to convert. So Tota in that sense is not the name of his father or mother, it's the name of a cow. If you go Kabbalistic, just to give you a vignette of Kabbalah here, the Arizal of the 16th century, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria Ashkenazi, he said that in a way the Tota, the cow, caused him to be born. What does that mean? So he said that the cow is Vashti. You know, in the book of Esther, there is a story about Vashti, and the first wife of Achashverosh, and the Midrash said that she forced the daughter of Israel to walk on Shabbat. And therefore, after Achashverosh get rid of her, that soul transmigrated to a cow. And then that was her repair, the soul repair. And he goes further to say that Ben Tota, it's the Achashverosh. They say that originally he was the horse guard, and therefore it was a transmigration of that soul. But anyway, that's Kabbalah, that's the Arizal. Back to our subject. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Tota, mipnei ma charva Shiloh. What's the reason that Shiloh was the place that the tabernacle was temporarily before building the Beit HaMikdash? If you remember, when we talk in Jewish history lectures, we talk about the process. So first it was in a Gilgal, when they entered to the land of Israel, and then after 14 years, they have it in a place called Shiloh. If you go to the city of Shiloh nowadays, you see all kind of architectural evidence that it was a tabernacle. But according to our sources, the tabernacle was there for 369 years, until the destruction at the time of Eli, the high priest, which is the first book of Shmuel, chapter 4. If you want to read more, it's the Tractate Zvachim, page 118. So he said, what's the reason of the destruction of that city of Shiloh? Mipnei shehayu ba shnei dvarim. It was two iniquities. One is called Gilui Arayot. Gilui Arayot, in a simple way, it's the forbidden sexual relations. The second one is Ubizyon Kodashim. And they said that you have a degradation of the consecrated items. So, Gilui Arayot, how do you know that it was a sexual, forbidden sexual relations? They said, they said about Chofni and Pinchas, these two sons of Eli, the high priest, book of Shmuel, first one, chapter 2, ואלי זקן מאוד, ושמע את כל אשר יעשון בניו לכל ישראל, ואת אשר ישכבון את הנשים הצובעות פתח אוהל מועד. Simply, literally speaking, that Eli was very old, and he heard that his sons were doing to all Israel, how they lay with the women who did service at the opening of the tent of meeting. So they said, ואף על גב דאמר רבי שמואל בר נחמני אמר רבי יוחנן, even the rabbis tells us, כל האומר בני אלי חטאו אינו אלא טועה, whoever said that the sons of Eli sinned by engaging in forbidden sexual relations, is nothing there mistaken, which means that it's not the truth, it's not what happened. So Ela, so what's the truth? Mitoch, but due to the fact 9b, ששהו את קיניהם. So there are several versions what happened. ששהו את קיניהם, simply speaking, there is a bird, pair of bird offering that the women after their childhood needs to bring to Beit HaMikdash, following the Torah precept. So here we said that those women came there and they delayed the offering. Doesn't mean that they have sexual relations. It means that they didn't do the job right away. So they caused those ladies to stay instead of going back and have relation with their husbands. So because of that, it's considering as they actually have relation with them. That's one version. So therefore the verse ascribed to them as if they lay with them even it wasn't so, because they caused that gilui arayot, the forbidden relations. Bizyon kodashim, the second one, which is a desecration of consecrated items. So they said, they said in the book of Shmuel, chapter 2, גם בטרם יקטירון את החלב, ובא נער הכהן ואמר לאיש הזובח, תנה בשר לסלול לכהן ולא ייקח ממך בשר במושל כי אם חי, ואמרו אליו האיש, כתר קטירון כיום החלב וקח לך אשר תאווה נפשך, ואמר לו, כדאי תתן במלוא, לקחתי בחוזקה, ותהי חטאת נערים גדולה מאוד פני השם, כי נרצו את אנשים במחד השם. You see those translations, the key point is that they treated people poorly. In a way, you may say that they forced people to give an offering, since the Kohanim deserve to eat part of the offering, there is a certain time frame. They're not allowed to do it before they burn the incense, the kaktarat imurim. And the sons of Eli took that meat before the completion of the ritual process, which means they didn't follow the decorum of service and they did it forcefully. So that's considering as acting of real
So Rabbi, they wasn't really like bad guys, they just went about it the wrong way or something. So because
Gilbert,
they didn't really...
I will say this. We just read several opinions. There is an opinion that said that they are bad. There is another opinion said that they are bad, but not by having relations, but by causing people to sin. In other words, the key is they did something wrong. The question is how severe is their wrongdoing. So we see here different avenues. Anyway, but they use the term like they physically did all of that. Mikdash Rishon b'pnei macharav, that's so important. Why the first Beit HaMikdash destroyed? מפני שלושה דברים שהיו בו. 3 things happened there. Number 1, עבודה זרה, worshipping idols. Number 2, גילוי עריות, forbidden sexual relations, ושפיכות דמים, and bloodshed. And here they're bringing the sources. עבודה זרה מניין, how do you know that the temple destroyed, the first one, because of worshipping idols? So he said, כי קצר המצה, דכתיב, כי קצר המצה משתרע במסכה קצרה מלהיכנס. The Isaiah said in 28, because the bed is too short for stretching and coverage too narrow for gathering. So it means, מהי קצר המצה מתרסע? What does that mean? אמר רבי יוחנן, קצר מצה זה, משתרר עליו שני רעים כאחד. So he explains that the bed is too short. The bed is too short for two counterparts to dominate. So it basically speaks about the idol of the Tselem, the idol of worship that Menashe, the wicked king, put in the sanctuary. So God removed his divine providence from the Beit HaMikdash as a result of that. והמסכה צרה כנתכנס. So the cover was too narrow for gathering. So אמר רבי שמואל בר נחמני כי מתי רבי יוחנן להיקרא בכי. When Rabbi Yochanan read that, he cried. אמר מן לכתיב כונס כנד מהים. What does that mean when it said in the book of Psalms 33 that God gathered the water of the sea throughout the heap? נעשית לו מסכה קצרה. The idol became a rival. So it means that masecha, it's like homiletically like an idol, and tzara is interpreted as a rival. So it describes a relationship between two women married to the same husband. So isha tzara, that one have a bad feeling toward the others. The great Rav Shach, the Rosh Yeshiva of Ponevezh, may rest in peace, wrote in the introduction to his book Amalah Shel Torah, and he explains, we all know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was those negotiation or talk between Abraham and God. Maybe there are 45 righteous, etc., until they reach, maybe there are 10 righteous in a city, and God said, if there are 10 people in a city, I will not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So, meaning, in a way, if you have a minyan, if you have 10 righteous people, because of that promise, they turn around the people, that minyan, that people, and change the whole destiny of those wicked city. But it was not that decorum of 10 people to change the destiny of the city. So that's the cause of in other words, people are sin, but if you have in a balance, in a scale, 10 righteous people, the whole destiny of that city can change. The Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, explains, and you see it to this very day, that the worst Chilul Hashem, the worst thing that is a total desecration of name of God, is the place that we have, the Holy of Holies, the Beit HaMikdash. You see that is they build there a place to worship idols, and you see it to this very day. And the Ramban hold that that's the worst Beit HaMikdash, worst desecration to make that happen. So we pray and hope that things will turn and it will change. Anyway, so back here they said Gilui Arayot. The second one is Gilui Arayot, meaning a sexual forbidden relations. So they said Dichtiv in Isaiah chapter 3, Vayomer Hashem, God said, Yan ki gavhu bnot Zion, vatelachna netuyot garon umshakrot enayim aloch vetafov telachna b'reglechem te'akesna. So in short, it was an act of seducing the men by women. They, in the way that they dress, in the way that they walk. It's a very graphic description in Isaiah that they cause Yan ki gavhu bnot Zion. For example, they say that the daughter of Zion, they are honti. So explain, Shayu malchot aruka betzad ktsara. So tall and short walk next to each other in order to get the attention of the young man. And as a result, they create the scene, vatelachna netuyot garon, and they walk in outstretched neck. What does that mean? שהיו מלכות בקומה זקופה. That they will walk with upright stature and carry themselves in a very immodest way. ומשקרות עיניים, and wanton eyes. So they say, דהבו מליין כוחלה עיניהן. That they put all kind of cosmetic beauty in their eyes. הלוך ותפוף תנחנה. The way that they walk, it's they describe that they walking and mimicking the way they go. שהיו מלכות עקב בצד גודל. That they walk in a small step, heel to toe. So basically they get the attention of the men. וברגליהן תעקסנה, and they said that they are making a tinkling with the feet. So they explained that they said, אמר רבי יצחק שהיו מביאות מור ועשרמון ומניחות במנעליהן. So they put in their shoes a very strong aroma of perfume. כשמגיעות אצל בחורי ישראל בועטות, when they see the young Jewish men, they congregate, they were stamp their feet on the ground, and as a result, ומתיזות עליהם, and splash the perfume toward these young men, ומכניסים בהם יצר הרע כארז כעוס, and they instill an evil inclination to this boy like a venom of a viper. So basically, they said that they cause act of immodesty among the young men, and that cause. But Rashi go and tell us the next step, which is the most frightening part. Rashi said in Tractate Shabbat, he said unsuot hayu. It was a married woman that did that. In other words, it was not just girls; it was a married woman that did. Anyway. The third reason, shfichut damim, with regard to bloodshed, the third reason why the Beit HaMikdash destroyed, they said it was a so dechtiv in the book of Kings, chapter 21, וגם דם נקי שפך מנשה הרבה מאוד, עד אשר מילא את ירושלים פה לפה. Good morning. They said that moreover Menashe, the wicked king, shed innocent blood very much until he had filled Yerushalayim from one end to another. So again, the Gemarrah in Sanhedrin 103 elaborate on that. But this basically, you see the three acts of sinning during the first Beit HaMikdash. Rabbi Yochanan ben Tota continued, and he said, "Aval Mikdash Sheni." However, when it's come to the second Beit HaMikdash, שהיו עוסקים בתורה ומצוות וגמילות חסדים. So the era of the second temple was the era that people occupied themselves with study Torah, performing its commandments and loving kindness. So mipnei macharav. So the truth is, the Rabbi Yonatan Eibishit said that it was a Sadducees and Baitusees and all kind, but we talk about the source of the problem was not them, but mipnei shehayta bo sinat chinam. The reason that the second Beit HaMikdash destroyed was because of hateless, causeless. So it means that people hate each other for causeless. So ללמדך. So they come to teach us ששקולה שנאת חינם כנגד שלוש עבירות. That hating a fellow is equivalent to the three iniquities: עבודה זרה, גילוי עריות, שפיכות דמים, worshipping idols, having a forbidden sexual relations, and shedding blood. Because remember, the first Beit HaMikdash destroyed because of that, and the second one is just because a causeless hatred. So Reb Chaim Kanievsky, the great rabbi of Bnei Brak, every time I'm in Israel, I have the privilege to see him as well as his father. And the interesting part, his gabbai never allowed me to wait in line. He says, Rabbi of Shul, not waiting in line. Anyway, so Reb Chaim Kanievsky said that the key for our success to overcome the challenges, as we all know that the threat from Iran is very serious to Israel. The Prime Minister Netanyahu constantly speaks about the threat of the nuclear, etc. So Chaim Kanievsky said that the key to survive this is to improve our machloket, act of causeless hatred, and carry more love, ahavat Israel, love of our fellow. The Torah tells us in the book of Vayikra, chapter 19, Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. So the whole idea is that the Chafetz Chaim tells us that whatever the reason is, a person needs to overcome that, because that's the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that always waiting at the corner to fail us. And since you see that the distance between the first and the second Beit HaMikdash is 70 years, which means in a way it took us about 70 years to repair the three sins of idol worshipping, of forbidden sexual relations, with spilling blood. Yet from the second Beit HaMikdash we are without Beit HaMikdash for 2,000 years, which means the idea of hated causeless, it still have in effect, the disease have an effect on us to this very day. So still we not repair that point. We our yearning and prayer to have the Beit HaMikdash, the third one, rebuild, cannot be fulfilled. So it shows you the severity of that. I continue. רשעים היו אלה שתלו ביטחונם בקדוש ברוך הוא. That generation committed many sins for which they were not punished because they put the trust in God. They were punished only for violating the most severe prohibition. That's the way Rabbi Pinto tells us. But the key is that they trust God in one hand, but they committed Atan leMikdash Rishon. Now we understand the first one, but how about the second one? Dichtiv, the Mikdash Rishon, the first one, is said in the book of Micah, chapter 3. ראשיה בשוחד ישפוטו וקונם במחיר יורו ונביאה בכסף יקסומו אבל השם ישענו לאמור לו שמגמרם כי לא תבוא לנורא. So they said it was a lot of corruptions, but they said, we trust in God, so even they take a bribery and even they did all kind of sins, they לפיכך הביא עליהם הקדוש ברוך הוא 3 גזירות כנגד 3 עבירות אדם. They measure for measure, God punished them for these 3 sins שנאמר. They said לכן בגללכם ציון שדה תחרש וירושלים עין תהיה והר הבית לבמות יער. So therefore you get all this punishment because therefore due to the Zion will be plowed in the field, Jerusalem will become a heap of a ruin, and the Temple Mount will be like a shrine in the wood. So that's the idea that they feel that they can. It's remind me of Rabbi Elbaz of Israel. It's a great rabbi. He used to go and have many balei tshuva, many penitent, many people change the way. So one time he talked in a place, and they brought the well-known thief in that area. He came to his lecture, and he's well-known. Everybody knows that guy. So that guy stood up and he said, yes, you see, I always get away with the police. I always get away with what I'm doing. Guess why? I'm carrying this book of Psalms, and I always pray to God to be protected. Which is, in a way, very awkward or funny or ridiculous or whatever you call it. It's one of those wrong mindsets that people have. They think you can do both. And it doesn't work that way. במקדש ראשון לא הווה בשנאת חינם. So the Gemarrah tells us, ask, is it true that in the first temple era was there really no baseless hatred? והכתיב, Ezekiel said in chapter 21, מגורי אל חרב היו את עמי, לכן ספוק אל ירך. He said clearly that it was act like that. They will cast before the sword together with my people, therefore they struck the thigh. So that's for sure is allegory statement. And he said, אלו בני אדם שאוכלים ושותים עם זה, ודוקרים זה את זה בחרבות של לשונם. This is a people that people get together, live together, trust each other, and then behind the back they stab them. Another hypocrisy, that you sit with someone, you think he's your friend, you eat together, right, and you trust each other, you feel confidence, and then the next thing you know, that person is a backstabbing and bad-mouthing you behind your sins, behind your back. I can tell you in my 18 years in rabbinate, how many times my family, my wife and I struggle with that. We have people, as you know, people call my home Weisblum B&B, right? Bed and breakfast, because everybody's in our home. Yet it was sometimes some people that just, it get back to us, that they just bad mouth about the children, about the painting in a house, and all kind of things that they talk after they've been with us, some of them for a long time. One case, we have family that was by us every Shabbos for almost 2 years. And then all of a sudden, they bad mouth. So that's the sadness of the causeless hatred. So he lament over that, and he said that people speaking evil gossip and lashon hara out of just causeless hatred. Hahi ben si'ei Israel havai. So the Gemara said that applies solely to the president, the leaders of the nation. The Chtiv, they said at the beginning of that pasuk, Z'ak v'hilel ben adam ki hi hayta be'ami. Cry and wail, son of man, for this befall my people. V'tanya z'ak v'hilel ben adam, yachol lakol, Talmud lomar, hi bechol nisei Yisrael. That applies specifically to the leader of that generation. Rabbi Yochanan v'Rabbi Lazar da'amrit ravayu, in regards to the destruction of two Beit HaMikdash, Rishonim, the people on the first temple era, shenidgala avonam, nidgala kitzam. So they didn't hide their sins, and everyone knows that they're involved with those violations. So they knew already the end, because Jeremiah predicted. They said in Jeremiah 29, Lefim melod Bavel 70 shana efkol etchem, that he predicted that after the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, it will be 70 years, and then they return. As we all know, Ezra and Nehemiah return. So, Achronim shelo nidgala avonam. But the second Beit HaMikdash, that they're hiding their sins, which means they talk behind the back of people and hate each other, therefore, lo nidgala kitzam. So said that the end of their punishment was not exposed, which means we do not know. The Maharsha said that thief have more punishment than the robber. Why? The robber goes during the day, take a gun and say, give me your money, and that's it. He's not hiding from anyone. But a thief pretend to be a good man, and he comes at night because he afraid of people, but he's not afraid of God. So the thief, we have a double punishment. In that sense, people who pretend to be friends, and then behind the back they do that, that's the sins that we don't know how long we suffer from the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Tovat ציפורנן של ראשונים מקריסן של אחרונים. Which means the first, the fingernail, again is allegory, of the former are preferable to the belly of the later, which means the people at the second Beit HaMikdash much worse than the first one, which means the nail is a part of the body that when you cut it, it doesn't carry an importance to the body. But the belly, that it's a centerpiece of the body, that's, if something happened, that causes agony to the entire body. So it means that it was a level of degradation between the people. In the second Beit HaMikdash, they're way worse than the first one. Amar Reish Lakish respond to Rabbi Yochanan, Adraba, Achronim Adifei. He says the opposite. The last one is better than the first one. Afal Gavdi, that even they have all this subjugation by the kingdoms, they are engaged in Torah study. So Amar Lei, Rabbi Yochanan answered to Reish Lakish, Bira Tochiach. The Beit HaMikdash will prove that the first one was better. Sharei Chazra Larishonim v'lo Chazra Lachonim. I explained to you simply. Look, the first Beit HaMikdash destroyed was sad, but 70 years later it rebuilt. The second one is still not. Shalu et Rabbi Lazar, Rishonim Gdolim or Achronim Gdolim? Who is the former greater than the later? So he said, Amar lem tnu enechem babira. So look simply and see that the second one did not build. The fact that we don't have Beit HaMikdash, every generation that don't build the Beit HaMikdash is like destroying that generation, the Rabbi said. So here is an example of the divine providence dwell in Beit HaMikdash. Reish Lakish, who live in Eretz Israel, Hava Sachei Biyardena. He used to swim in the Jordan River. Ata Rabba Bar Chana. Rabba Bar Chana came from Babylon, and he saw him coming out of the river. Ihavle Yada. So he brought his hand in order to get his help to come out, as out of respect. Amar lei elaka. He's like use a language of vow. Sanenalu. You don't like. We don't like those Babylon, because guess what? Some of you stay in Babylon during the time that Ezra came. As you know, Ezra was the spiritual leader. Nehemiah was the administrator. They tried to convince the people to make Aliyah from Bavel to Eretz Israel, and unfortunately many of them just want to send a check and leave me alone from all that. And it was the minority who follow Ezra and Nehemiah and really build a simple Beit HaMikdash made out of wood. And it's a description that Ezra and Nehemiah tells us that they said, we hold a sphere in one hand against the Samaritans, and the other hand we're building the Beit HaMikdash, which means that they went through a lot of difficulties. And he said to him, look, you guys just send a check, but you didn't bother to make Aliyah and help us building the Beit HaMikdash. You stay in Bavel because of whatever, convenience, money, etc. So because of that, the divine providence not dwell permanently in the second Beit HaMikdash. Dichtiv, they said in Song of Songs, chapter 8, Im chomahi nivne ala atirat kasef, v'im delet li natsur alea luach arez. The King Solomon said that if you take the choma, if she be as a wall, again it's the allegorical language, will be a silver turret upon her, and if she is a door, will cover her with the broad of cedar. So it means that apply to the Jewish people. And he said, Im asitem atzmechem kachoma, valitem kulchem bimei Ezra, nimshaltem kakesef, she'en rakav sholet bo. If you really overcome your evil inclination to be a slave of your money and your wealth, and you just join Ezra and Nehemiah in a mission to rebuild the second Beit HaMikdash, so then you are like a silver. Silver means that the rakav, which not infests, and you merit experiencing only partial revelation of the divine presence. Achshav she'alitem kidlatot, which means that you come out like a doors that it's split to two, which means that only part of you made the Aliyah to Eretz Israel. Nimshaltem ka'erez she'arakav sholet bo. You are compared like a erez, like a cedar that it's not survive for a long time. That it's like not that it's in phase. So the divine providence wasn't permanent in this during the second Beit HaMikdash. My erez. So the Gemara elaborate on the word cedar. So Amar Ula Sas Magor. Sas Magor, Ura says that it's a type of worm. So Amar Rabbi, my Sas Magor, what does that mean? Sas Magor. Amar Rabbi Abba Bat Kol. So in my book, ביורע כלומר ברש"י על הש"ס, I explained Rashi here. Rashi said, "My sas masgor, lama nimshlu b'vayit sheni l'sas masgor l'gan shkirat shana." Why you compare the people in the second Beit HaMikdash to sas masgor? So he said that you're using here a metaphorical item, which is you compare the worm to the divine providence dwelling. It's like using the allegory, and that's the reason I think that he used the word klomar. So Amar Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba said bat kol. Rabbi Abba said that it was a time that they have level of the prophecy, the lowest level of prophecy, the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, that it's called like you hear a voice from heaven. כדתניא משמתו נביאים האחרונים, we learn when the late prophets passed away, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, these are the names of prophets that was in the era of the second temple. נסתלקה רוח הקודש מישראל, ועדיין היו משתמשים בבת קול. The divine spirit of prophetic revelation departed from the Jewish people, and they were still utilizing the bat kol, the divine voice, which they heard as some type of echo of prophecy. So the Gemara said in Eruvin 13 why they use this bat kol. וריש לקיש קם ממשתאי בהדי רבא בר חנא. So he talked with him. Umar Rabbi Elazar Gemarrah d'Arar d'Israel Hava. Rabbi Elazar was so erudite in halachot that it's called the Mar'ah, the one who understands. The Gemara said in Nida, page 20b, that he was the one who they asked him a complicated question in regards to Mar'ot Nida, that a certain level of nida, that they need to make sure that they are available or not to the husband. ואף לא הווה משתאי ריש לקיש בעדי, דמן משתאי ריש לקיש בעדי, בשוק יאבו לעסקה בלא סעדי. Which means people saw that Rish Lakish engaged with him, so they trust him, and they gave him money, even without witnesses, without contract, meaning that they trust him. Bahadei Rabba Babachana Mishtai, so it means that he was much smaller than Elazar, and they are, in a way, discussed Marav Papa, it's a mistake, Ujdei Gavra Benayu. It's a mistake, it's a different name, that's not the correct name, or Rish Lakish Hava, Uziiri, or Rabba Bar Chana Hava, Rabbi Elazar. So, in other words, the one who bathed was either Zeiri or Rabbi Elazar, and it was not Rish Lakish. So when they came before Rabbi Yochanan, they said what he said about the Babylonian. Amar lei lav hainu tama. That's not the reason that the divine providence not dwell in the second temple. Inami sliku kulu bimei Ezra. Even the entire Jewish community in Babylon went together with Ezra. Lo avashar shchina mikdash sheni. The divine providence will not dwell in the second temple. Dichtiv, the Torah already predicted it in the book of Bereshit, Genesis chapter 9. Yaft Elokim leyefet v'yishkon be'olei Shem. God will enlarge Japhet and dwell in a tent of Shem. Page 10. Af al gav the Yaft Elokim leyefet. Even the Persian merited that they are descendants of Yefet, and they merited to build the Beit HaMikdash, the second Beit HaMikdash, because Koresh, the king of Persia, he gave a special permission to build the Beit HaMikdash. If you remember, we studied that it was one of the gates, was like the Persian, etc. So, Ein HaShechina Shora Ela Be'olei Shem, which means the divine providence dwell only in descendants of Shem. That's what the Torah said in the story of the three sons of Noah after the ark. And they said, King Solomon, that he was a descendant of Shem. So that's the divine providence. But the second one was not. So Olei Shem, Maharsha said that's included the tabernacle, which was the temporary temple. So how do you know that Persian are descendants of Japheth? The Torah said in the book of Bereshit, chapter 10, Bnei Yefet, here are the list of the descendants of son of Yefet, Gomer, Umagog, Umadai, Veyavan, Vetuval, Umeshech, Vetiras. So, derived from that, Gomer ze Germania. Gomer, for the best understanding, you can say that is Germany, but basically that's called Germania. Magog zo Candia. Magog, it's Candia. So it's, some say that that's Cretim. They said in Ezekiel 38, it will be a war between Gog and Magog, and they come to the land of Israel from the north and try to attack. And it's the That's the war in the future, but others say that it's applied to different time. The Yosef and Matityahu said that that's applied to the time that there was a tribes that fought against the Roman emperor. Anyway, Madan zo Macedonia, Madai kemashmao, Yavan zo Macedonia. It's a different version. What is the Greece, etc. Tevel zebet Kai, Meshech zo Musia, Tiras Pligei. So it's a different location that attribute to different nation. So here Rabbi Simai ורבנן, ואמר לרבי סימון ורבנן, אחד אמר זו בית ירקי, ואחד אמר זו פרס. One said it's בית ירקי and one said at Persia. So according to that approach, Persia is listed among the descendants of Yefet. That's applied to Tiras. Tane Rav Yosef, Tiras zo Paras. According to Rav Yosef, Tiras is Persia. So therefore, Tiras is Persia, so they are descendants of the tribe of Japheth. So since we talk about this, so we have the sons of Cush, that was a son of Ham, son of Noach. So some say that that's applied to South African, the Cush. But anyway, they said in Torah, Savta v'Ra'ama v'Savtecha, and Sabat and Ra'ama and Savtecha. So Tane Rav Yosef, that the nation that came out, Sakistan, Gaviata, v'Sakistan, Braita. So the different location, the internal and the external. They said, Ben Chada Lachada Me'a Parsei, there are 100 parsaot between each of them, V'Hekefan Alfa Parsei. So they land, if you go, you see 1,000 parsaot. So Rashi said, again, we don't know exactly what does that mean, where exactly that apply. But they said, Vatihi Reshit Malachto Bavel Ve'erech Ve'akad Ve'kalna. So that's applied to Nimrod. They said Bavel Kemashma'a, that's Babylon. That's also name of the Shinar, name of the state, name of the city, some said. Erech zo Orichut. Ve'akad ze Bashkar, Kalna ze Nofer Ninfi. So again, it's those locations. Some say that it's a city called Nifor. Min haaretz ha'i yaseh Ashur. So since we're talking about Rishit, that the Ashur came from there, Tane Rav Yosef, Ashur ze Silak, Vayiven et Ninveh v'et Chovot v'et Kalach. That's Psukim in the book of Rishit, Ninveh kemashmao. That's from Assyrian, that we mentioned in the book of Yonah, in Jonah, about Ninveh. Rechovot Irzofrat de Meishan. Kalach דו ספרת דבור סיף, ואת רסן, ואת בנווה בן קלח היא העיר הגדולה. רסן זה הכתפון, היא העיר הגדולה, אין יהודה עם ננווה, היא העיר הגדולה, עם רסן היא העיר הגדולה. What exactly? כשהוא אומר, they said in the book of Yonah, chapter 3, וננווה הייתה עיר גדולה לאלוקים, הלך 3 ימים, והוא אומר, ננווה היא העיר הגדולה. So again, we are not sure what exactly Ninveh located. There's all kind of version, where is it? And that's the idea of the descendants of Ham. Rabbi tells us a frightening statement in regard to the second Beit HaMikdash. The whole point of the book Chafetz Chaim is in regards to a causeless hatred between people. So they said here that during the era of the second Beit HaMikdash, there were about 300 high priests. And unlike the first one, it was only 4 righteous high priests. And they said that they, in their ego, wanted even to serve as a high priest and die, not complete the year of service, just to be called a high priest, which can derive us the whole idea of sometimes the ego of a person can go on such a level that they lose. The Josephus claim that only 3 high priests were forced from their position, which means people not forced out of their position, they just purchase that position and serve less than a year. And as the Gemarrah tells us in other locations, that they wrap them with a special, what is called string.
Rope, yeah.
Rope.
Mm-hmm.
And they pull them out of Holy of Holies. They couldn't make the Yom Kippur, which derive us a very deep lesson. How far can people go with their ego?
צהבה